Over 2,000 rape cases were reported to Gauteng police stations between the 1st of October and the 31st of December last year. The province made up 27.1% of the national crime statistics in that same period. All of this was revealed by Police Commissioner, the Provincial Commissioner, Elias Mawela, during a briefing just yesterday. Let's unpack these numbers for you this morning. We're joined by the chairperson of the Gauteng Portfolio Committee on Community Safety, Dr. Bandile Masuku, joins us in studio this morning. Doc, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, and thanks for having us on your show.
I mean, essentially, Gauteng is the most dangerous place to live in South Africa. How do we balance our crime statistics versus the economic hub of the country?
Gauteng has got very specific characteristics that will actually define what you've just said. Besides that, it's a highly densely populated province. So naturally, you would expect that the numbers of any related crime will be higher in Gauteng. And I think it's something that we are pretty much aware of in terms of the number of murders and the number of assaults that are happening and the number of cash in transit heists that are happening. So these are things that we are actually worried about as a community safety in the portfolio committee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 27.1% out of 9 provinces. It's not just the biggest, it's the biggest by far insofar as these violent crimes is concerned.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we contributed that 27.1, and overall we had an increase of 7% in the overall crime stats. But we also need to understand that the period that we are looking at is a period that includes the festive season, and which largely is driven by high consuming of alcohol, which mainly drives most of these crimes that we have seen, in terms of rapes, in terms of assaults, and in terms of GBH, which is a big problem in our province.
Yeah, I've got the crime stats, just the overview pages here in front of me, and most of the lines here are in red, showing an increase in murder, sexual offences, attempted murder. What stands out for you insofar as, where we go from here? Because this is not a new discussion we're having this morning with you. It's one we have probably every quarter,
every day,
when we see the release of the crime statistics. How do we take this discussion forward?
I think we generally need everyone actually to play a role. We need the community themselves to be part of the fight and the prevention of crime, through their structures, the CPF. We need police, to be, visible and be on high alert in many instances. We need business to be part of the fight. And these are collaborative, efforts that will make us, defeat this. But if we are only going to expect police to be the one that deals with it, it will be a big problem. And we expect that ultimately, we would want to see the public, the community themselves, trying to play a big role in policing themselves. And there are different ways, it's very disappointing and discouraging that our only way of trying to resolve conflict, is to assault one another, And it could be understandable that many people are under pressure, under stress, and they are easily snapped out. But these are things that we need to work on. And we need all other departments, social development to deal with unemployment, to deal with issues relating to poverty. We need health to deal with the mental health, aspect of it.
There's load shedding.
So there's load shedding. So everybody's under stress. So we need everybody. So it cannot be only the fight of the police, but it needs everyone to be part of this, great effort.
Well, let's talk about the community's involvement, because right now, and this is the angle that the Sowetan newspaper is going with this morning. Right now, what the community sees as its involvement is taking the law into its own hands, if these numbers are anything to go by. One of the issues being reported on in these crime stats is, and there's the front page of the Sowetan there, is that at least one person is killed every day in mob justice attacks in Gauteng. That's incredibly alarming.
That's incredibly alarming, but the other thing that we need to put context into it so that we understand where this actually happens. And it normally happens in areas where, it's informal settlements, It's areas that are pretty much under-resourced in terms of access to government services, including police, because some of these informal settlements are not really planned, so it becomes even difficult for even EMS to access some of those areas. And these are areas where this mob justice does happen, and it cannot be condoned. It must be condemned with strongest terms, because we cannot take the law into our hands. The second aspect of it, in terms of the context, it's also the issue of trust. The community having trust, on the police. It's something that we raised yesterday with the commissioner and his team, that there should be a greater effort to build this trust. And we, as a committee, we are supposed to be the one that part of facilitating, building of trust. And the third aspect is also in building trust. We need to, in a real sense, deal with the police moral, because they also have their own issues. They are underpaid, they work in difficult, circumstances, and it's a myriad of actually factors. But I think identifying them and contextualizing them in a way, it will make us understand, why the issue of mob justice is happening. Because it doesn't happen in Sandton, it doesn't happen in areas, but it happens in, informal settlements in a large way.
In fact, the South African Policing Union just this week said it wanted to join the public service, the strike that's happening in the public service over the past week. It's a situation we can ill afford, right, in a context where we are already underserviced insofar as policing is concerned.
Yeah, we can't afford it,
And yet you talk about the issue of morale.
Yes, and it's something that has to be done, Staff morale in terms of police, actually should be elevated. And part of it is that when we deal with the issues of bargaining, for an example, we require a different way on doing bargaining for public service, workers, because these are people that do a whole lot of work and that are servicing us, and they need to be treated in a different way and in a special way, because they put a whole lot of effort to service us. So with police, with what we are facing, it's something that is very worrisome, and I'm hoping that the management team of the police will be able to deal with it swiftly and be able to resolve some of the issues that they're raising.
Yeah. Sexual offences, assault, GBH, all of these accounting for more than 50% of the total contact crimes that were reported in Gauteng. In terms of gender-based violence in particular, Dr. Masuku, during the pandemic, we described it as our parallel pandemic, the scourge of violence against women and children. And again, I'm going to ask you, is this a sector that is particularly difficult to police because in many instances it happens inside the home? And if so, do we throw up our hands and say, this is really just a difficult thing that we can't get our head around in South Africa?
Yeah, we need to work on the issues that are underlying, and as I've said when we started the conversation, that alcohol consumption is one big issue, but what drives alcohol consumption, you'll be surprised that in areas where we think that they're most depressed economically, but there's high level of alcohol consumption. And in many instances, this type assaults, rapes, actually happen and are driven by, partly, alcohol. And it's something that we need to deal with. So if we deal with it, we need to focus on the issues relating to social development. As I've said, the issues of poverty, unemployment. We have to deal with the mental health aspect of it. And it means it requires everybody to be, on board, instead of us being able to focus on one line. And the other thing, correctly as you put it, is that this normally happens with, they know the place, they know the assailant, and it happens in the places where they, actually they're familiar with. And it shows that it's things that we might not be able to police, but it needs a serious behavioral change generally from the populace of the province.
So as the Committee on Community Safety, the Portfolio Committee, what are your next steps? We get these statistics, we're outraged for a couple of days, you come in here and do an interview. And it does feel, and I'm sure our viewers will be feeling like this as well, that we are talking in circles. What are the next practical steps as the Portfolio Committee that you're able to implement?
The police and the Department of Community Safety, they reported that there's a strategy that has been adopted by Cabinet late last year. So part of our work will be doing, which works on prevention of crime and fighting crime. And that strategy, our role will be to do oversight and seeing that it gets implemented. And the pillars that have been spoken about in the strategy revolve around the things that I was saying in terms of partnerships, collaboration. It revolves about community involvement. It also revolves around issues of socio-economic aspects. So our role as a Community Safety Portfolio Committee is to make sure that that gets implemented. And secondly, our role...
And that you get report backs.
And get report backs. Yeah. And our oversight will normally, constitute being part of some of the operations to see how they are done and doing unannounced visits in police station to see how, the service is done. And also mainly focusing on GBV, which is something that, as you have said, that it is a sketch.
Yeah.
So that is our role, and facilitating broader participation by the community in fighting crime. I can tell you that fighting crime won't happen only if we rely on police. It needs the community, it needs all of us to be part of the fight.
Yeah, it's probably the most multi-sectoral fight that we have to embark on here in South Africa. Let me thank you for your time. Dr. Bandile Masuku is the chairperson of the Gauteng Portfolio Committee on Community Safety. Really shocking numbers being revealed yesterday with the third quarter crime statistics for the province of Gauteng, showing that it is the most dangerous place to live.